Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here. Thanks for being on the broadcast today. I'm coming to you from the airport in Panama. I'm actually in the business center in the club and waiting on my flight to Austin, Texas, where I'll be heading down to the border to cover this conflict between Texas and the federal government that's taking place. And like I said yesterday, it's kind of a perfect storm because in the midst of that conflict, you also have a caravan of migrants that's coming up from the south, and you have a caravan of patriots that's coming down from the north, and all of them are going to clash right around that park in Eagle Pass, Texas. Now, as I said yesterday, this is a lot of it is just theater. Because for one thing, the massive convoy of 10,000 people that left southern Mexico a couple weeks ago, hasn't even made it to the northern border yet. And even when they do, they're going to make it, they're not going to all come to one place. What happens is they go to Mexico City, and from there, the cartels tell them where they're going to be able to go to cross the border into the United States. So the cartels are acting like traffic cops to say, okay, this group of people is going to go up to Lukeville, this group of people is going to go to Eagle Pass, this group of people will go to McAllen, et cetera, and we'll spread them out across the border. And a lot of that has to do with where the cartels want to bring drugs across, and so they want to create a crisis in certain areas of the border to keep the Border Patrol busy. And then instead of being able to cover the whole border, there will be big wide open spaces where the cartels can bring their drugs through unmolested. Now, there was a very interesting and very telling exchange between James Kirby and the reporter from Fox News that was just that put up online. This is from let's see. Yeah, Peter Ducey, he just grilled John Kirby about this whole issue. And it was very telling because James Kirby said, well, first Ducey said, why are you guys against stopping the traffic at the border? And Kirby said, what makes you think that? And he's like, what are you talking about? You want to remove the barbed wire that's keeping people out. And Kirby said, no, we want to remove the barbed wire so that the Border Patrol agents can do their jobs. And that sounds good, but then as the conversation went on, he sort of got him to clarify, well, what do you mean by the Border Patrol agents doing their jobs? Isn't stopping the people from coming across doing their jobs for them? And he said, no. Kirby said, that their job is to process people who come across the border, and they can't do that if the people can't come across the border. So if you think about what he just said there, he was very specific. I'm going to put this up on my YouTube channel, on my webpage over on Locals. Just go to chuckholton.com and you can see this exchange after this is over. But he made very clear, Kirby did, that his understanding of what the Border Patrol is there for is not to stop people from coming across the border. It's to process people as they come across. It's to take their name and number, to issue them a court date for their asylum hearing, and then allow them into the country, set them free. And this illustrates the difference between the Republican and the Democratic understanding of what the Border Patrol is there for and what indeed the southern border is there for. I saw one MSNBC interview where they had a legal scholar from some college on there, and he was saying that the Border Patrol can make a border crossing wherever they want. And so if they want to make this park a border crossing for people to wade across the river or swim across the river and come into the United States, then they can do that. Well, this is what the Supreme Court came up with, was that they have that Roosevelt easement that's 100 yards inland from the border, and the federal government controls the Roosevelt easement. And so that 100 yards of land inside the United States is under the jurisdiction of the federal government through the US CBP. And the state's argument to that is, well, once people get on U.S. soil, we can't kick them out again. So we have to stop them from coming onto U.S. soil before they step foot on American soil, or we're out of luck and we have to keep these people because we can't push them back into Mexico if they're not Mexican. And so, but that's what the federal government under Joe Biden is banking on to get as many of these people in as possible. Now, I wanted to talk in this particular live about, and I got to watch the time because I'm going to catch my plane. I want to talk about the moral case for closing the border. Why is it a moral thing for us to stop these people from coming across illegally? And this is very important to understand, because obviously you'll hear this argument from people on the left, from Democrats, that will say, you know, well, these people are just looking for a better life. And so it'd be unethical, it'd be immoral for us to stop them from doing so, because everybody has the right to seek a better life. Well, yes, they do. People, this is often how these arguments go. They will make an argument that has a kernel of truth, but then they will corrupt that argument with by twisting it into something that's absolutely immoral and indeed depraved. And so that's why we need to be clear about the morality of stopping people from crossing the border illegally. And you know, there are a lot of people that struggle with this, because you see the footage from the border, you see these women and children coming across, they're bedraggled, and they've obviously been walking for 4,000 miles, you know, so they're really wiped out, and they're desperate. They just need to get into the United States, right? Well, why do they need to get into the United States? Why can't they wait inside Mexico until their case is adjudicated? Well, that's the more difficult question to answer. And the assumption is that you know, Democrats use is that, well, there is no actual safe place in the world, anywhere on the planet, except for the United States of America. We're the only place where people can find a better life. And that's just a lie. That is a lie that the migrants believe, and that a lot of the people who are helping the migrants believe. And it is just not true that the United States is the only place on planet Earth where these people can escape persecution, can escape crime and poverty. And indeed, it may not be the best place for them to do so. Think about this. You got somebody coming from Venezuela, and in Venezuela, the average household income now, something like $25 a month, if that. And you know, obviously it's very difficult to make it on that, but people are making it on that in Venezuela. But they're hungry, and of course the government is terrible, and so they want to leave and they want to go somewhere else. They can go right across the border from Cucuta, Colombia, walk across the border into Colombia, where the average household income is more like $3,000 a year. So you're talking about, well, it's more than 3,000. It's probably 3,600, something like that. So they can immediately get like a five-fold increase in their standard of living by crossing the border into Colombia. They can work in Colombia. Colombia allows them to work while they're there. They can get jobs if they have any skills. If they don't, they can sell things on the street. As you know, we've been helping a lot of people stay in Colombia rather than coming to the United States. A lot of single mothers to keep them out of prostitution, keep their kids out of being trafficked and things like that. And you guys have been a tremendous help with that. So we've been, you know, on the ground in Colombia seeing this firsthand. They can make a better life. Now, are they going to have 2 cars and a big screen television and their kids in private school? Maybe not. But is that the standard? Does what the average American has, does that have to be the standard for the standard of living worldwide? If so, we're going to have several billion people on our shores because the United States is one of the only places that consumes at the level that we do. And I think you could make a very good argument that there are people who don't have money in places like Panama, where I live, who have a much better life, lower stress, higher quality of life, and healthier standard of living in Panama with almost no money than they have, than the average, income and standard of living in the United States. I'll tell you a story. I mean, there's a friend of mine in our little village in Panama named Sebastian. Sebastian's over 70 years old. He's lived on the same piece of land his entire life. He was born on that piece of land. His father was born there. His grandfather was born there. As far back as he can trace his family, they've been, living on this piece of land, subsistence farming, and doing very, very well. Okay, so in that case, this guy grows almost all of his own food. His electric bill is maybe $6 a month. His only other bill is really the uniforms and things he has to pay for his children to go to, or his grandchildren to go to school. And so, he doesn't pay any taxes. He's never paid any taxes. He doesn't need money. He grows almost everything he needs to eat. His days are made up by puttering around his farm and doing whatever he wants, just growing his food. He bathes in the creek down, below his house. It's nice, clear, clean water. He has unlimited free water. He doesn't need Wi-Fi. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have TikTok. And I would submit to you that he has lived a higher quality life than most people in the United States. As a matter of fact, I say that because I know a lot of people who work their fingers to the bone for their entire lives only to have just a little bit, just a taste of what Sebastian has had his whole life. To be able to just do whatever you want every day, to be able to grow a little bit, have a little garden on your property and sort of putter around your property gardening, not have to worry about taxes, not have to worry about your bills. Sebastian's got a very good life. So we're taking people that are in situations like that, and we're telling them, because you don't have a car, because you don't have health insurance, because you don't have a big screen television, we need to make good little Americans out of you people. And so we need to get you to the United States so that you can pay taxes, with a third or more of everything that you make, and have bills up the wazoo. And, it's not a better life. But people, so from a moral standpoint, to lie to people who are living a fairly good existence and get them to come to the United States to make wage slaves out of them is not a moral thing to do. It's not an ethical thing to do. But that's only looking at not taking into account the fact that in order for them to get to the United States, they've got to travel up to 4,000 miles across very dangerous territory. Most of them get robbed. Thank you, Kathy Barron. Pray for mercy for America. Yes, absolutely. Most of them get robbed. Many of them get raped. Some of them get murdered. And we talk about family separation. That was the big thing under Trump. It was like, oh, they're putting kids in cages. Because when they get to the United States, a lot of those migrants get put into detention facilities for sometimes months until they can find a sponsor in the United States. That's not a good standard of living. But because they can do better if they are, if they have a child with them. A lot of them, father will come and bring one of his kids, leave the rest of the kids home with his wife, and they go to the United States. And this may be not, some people are saying that I'm not loud enough. I don't know if I can make this louder or not. Let's see here. Let's see, how's that? Is that louder? Maybe that'll work. I've turned up the microphone a little bit. Maybe that'll help. So these guys leave with one of their kids. They come to the United States, and they leave their wife and some other kids at home, And then guess what? They get stuck in the United States, and they have to wait for their asylum hearing, which could take up to 3 years. And if they leave the country, they have to start that process all over again when they come back. So they can't go home and visit their family. They can't bring their family up. And guess what? That is the real family separation. So is that ethical, to lie to people and to get them to come to the United States to get a job just for more money while we separate these families for up to 3 years? Well, guess what happens? Then the father ends up with a girlfriend in the United States, because, I mean, you don't go 3 years without your wife, you might get a little lonely. And he ends up with another family in the United States, and then guess what? The money he's sending home dries up. The mom and the kids end up with nothing, and they're stuck at home, and now they don't have a provider, okay? This is the kind of thing that we see over and over and over happening as people come up to the United States. I just talked to a guy that I met coming out of the Darien Gap about 9 years ago when I was down there reporting on the conflict, because this was a crisis even back then. He's from Pakistan. He left his wife and his son in Pakistan to come to the United States with the idea that he would get his residency there and then bring his wife and kid over. But he still hasn't got his residency. He's been there 9 years, and he's not seen his wife in the flesh for 9 years. His son is now like 11 years old and doesn't remember his dad except for on the phone. You can imagine how horrible that is. And again, is it moral to lie to people that this is really what they need to do in order to have a better life? What we're doing is we're giving them a much worse life, and they never quite get that American dream. There's another family that I met from Haiti. Madesi is the little girl's name. She was, I think, 14 or 16 when I met her, before she went into the Darien Gap. She was almost raped in the Darien Gap. Her mother had to give up all of her jewelry and everything to buy off the gang members so that they wouldn't rape her daughter. And they made it to the United States. They went to New Jersey. Mom got a job working at Newark Airport in the secure area. I don't get this. She's an illegal immigrant, but she's working in the secure area of the airport at Newark Airport, making meals for the airplanes. And Madesi, the neighborhood that they live in is so dangerous. Madesi, this beautiful little black girl, can't go outside or she'll get raped by the gang members outside in her street. And she tells me, it's every bit as bad here as it was for us in Haiti. This is the reason we left Haiti, because we couldn't go out on the street without getting raped. And I got the same problem here. I might as well go back to Haiti where it's cheaper to live and I can at least see my mother once in a while. And so a lot of these migrants are finding out that American dream that they were sold is not actually real. They're not actually achieving that American dream in the United States. So we've only talked about the moral case for not lying to the migrants so far. But now let's talk about the moral case for American citizens. First of all, we've talked a lot about the economic impact on public services. There's an economic burden on public services like healthcare, education, law enforcement due to illegal immigration. We said yesterday, according to studies that the Federation for American Immigration Reform has done, that each immigrant family that comes across the border illegally costs the American taxpayer $60,000 per year. Now that's a family of three, but when you break it down, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars a year that in additional costs to the system that have to be borne by the American taxpayer. And you're worried about what we're giving to Ukraine? You're worried about giving $100 billion to Ukraine when we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on the migrants that are coming across into the United States? Now let's also talk about the labor market effects. The illegal immigration negatively impacts the job market for local workers. especially in low wage sectors. That is the jobs that your children would get as step-up jobs as they are working in college. You know, when I was a kid, I had my first job when I was 8 years old. I got a paper route. I had that job for 4 or 5 years, then I went to work on a farm doing farm labor. I started a little business mowing lawns and washing cars, and I made money that way as well. Then I got a job at a racquetball courts in our town, a little health club, when I was 12. Then I got a job at a car wash, and I worked at a car wash till I got out of high school. All of those jobs are now being taken by illegal migrants, all of those kinds of jobs. And what that means is our children are unable to go to work like that and to earn money as they are coming up until they are, you know, maybe out of college. It's very difficult for them to find jobs in those lower sectors of the labor market. And so thank you very much, Sergeant E5. What most folks fail to realize is that the folks coming across the border get free passage to a place of their choosing and prepaid $5,000 debit card, and their medical cost comes from the VA system funds. That's true. All of that's true. Sergeant E5 is absolutely correct about that, and I was actually going to get to that here shortly. So, you know, the cost to the American taxpayer is actually staggering. And it doesn't just go to the cost once the migrants get here. There are 650,000 migrants right now in the pipeline making their way north to the United States. That is going all the way back to Ecuador and Brazil and Colombia. And they're in the pipeline working their way north. 650,000 people. How are they able to afford that? How are they able to travel 4,000 miles? How much would it cost you to go to Ecuador right now and to do it by land, not just buy a plane ticket, but to actually make your way south, pay for hotels, pay for food, pay for transportation, going all the way to Ecuador? Well, that's what these people are having to pay, and it runs into the thousands of dollars. How are they paying for it? Well, believe it or not, it's funded by the U.S. taxpayer in large part because the UN budgets, get this, $1.6 billion that they're planning on handing out in 2024 under the Regional Refugee and Migrant Response Plan. That's the UN and the IOM. That's UNHCR, UN High Commission for Refugees, and the International Organization for Migration, handing out debit cards and literal envelopes full of cash to migrants that are coming up through the Western Hemisphere into the U.S. southern border. And much of that money is funded directly by the United States, by the U.S. taxpayer. Okay, that's you and me. Now, if you're watching and you're saying, I don't live in the United States, I'm coming to you from Australia or from Europe or from you know, someplace like that, well, guess what? All of this applies to you too, because every single point that I'm making here applies to the 800,000 migrants who came into Europe last year from Turkey. It applies to the hundreds of thousands who are coming into Australia from Indonesia and China. And so all of these things, these moral components apply to all of the migrants that are moving illegally around the world and being welcomed into Western countries. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about, just as a sidebar real quickly, why is this happening? Why are the global elites paying for this? Why are they encouraging this? Well, first of all, most of the global elites subscribe to a highly socialist, if not communist, point of view. And so this is one way that they can see that they can sort of spread the wealth around. Go back to what Barack Obama said famously, you didn't earn that. Meaning whatever wealth you have managed to accumulate in your life, you didn't actually earn that. You didn't work for it. That's not your money. That is only in your pocket because of the system that's been put in place to favor you over the poor people around the world who aren't able to access that system. And so any work that you did is really ancillary to the money that you make. You didn't earn it. It was given to you because of the system, the way the system is set up. And so what we want to do is plug everybody around the world into that system. And really what it is this lowest common denominator thinking. We want to reduce everybody to the lowest common denominator. Well, guess what? If you reduced everybody to the global mean, you would be talking about you living on, maybe about $3,000 or $4,000 a year. Okay, if we took the entire globe and reduced everybody to the same income, all of us will be living on about $3,000 or $4,000 a year. So guess what? You better get ready to reduce your standard of living if you live in the West. That's all there is to it. And this is what they call equity, not equality. Equality is a level playing field that everybody gets to play on, and you can do your best, and it should be fair for you from a legal standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and that's what we call the free market. Equality equals the free market. Equity means the equality of outcomes, means everybody, no matter how hard you work or don't work, you should all end up with the same amount of money at the end. That's equity. And that is what the global elite are shooting for in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, and around the world. Now, let's go to a little more sinister aspect of the moral components for closing the southern border. And that is the national security concerns that we have to worry about when we have unchecked migration coming across the southern border. The national security concerns go just back to the fact that anybody can get across the border and can get anything they want across with them. So we see enough fentanyl coming across the U.S. southern border to literally kill the entire planet, to overdose everybody on the planet. Every year, we have at least that much fentanyl coming across the southern border. We also have at least 2 people every month that are being captured, trying to come across the southern border, who are on the U.S. terror watch list. That begs the question, how many people are coming across that are on the terror watch list that we're not capturing? Because the number of people that are being picked up by Border Patrol is the smaller figure. The number of gotaways, known gotaways, and unknown gotaways is arguably more than the hundreds of thousands of people coming across every month our southern border who are being captured. And so if we know that we're capturing terrorists, that means that there are most likely a lot more terrorists who are getting across the southern border who are not being captured. And that doesn't take into account the people who are not on a terror watch list because they're not on any list at all. They don't have a passport, they've never been in any database, but they have evil intent, and they're coming across the border and will at some point activate, whether that's from an outside source or just because they are internally motivated to do so, and they will go and commit mayhem inside the U.S. borders. That is another ethical or moral case for closing the southern border. Now, rule of law and legal immigration, it just comes down to this. You can't have a country if you don't have a border. And if you would try to make the case that we can still have a functional United States of America with completely unchecked migration across the southern border, I've yet to see that case made. So I'd like to see how somebody tries to justify that, rationalize that, and so far haven't had it. Now, drug trafficking and arms trafficking and sex trafficking across the southern border, allowing people to come in unchecked illegally, opens up corridors and pathways for drugs, arms, people, and other illicit substances to be moved back and forth across the border much more easily because it ties up Border Patrol and they're not able to be out there patrolling. Border Patrol, should be patrolling the border, should not be the welcome wagon for hundreds of thousands of people coming across the border. Now, here's one that people don't talk about very much, and that's the diplomatic leverage that other countries exercise over the United States because of the unchecked migration along the southern border. Mexico is the case in point, of course, because they're our nearest neighbor. And you know, the Biden administration recently went to AMLO, to Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, and said, look, you've got to cut back on the immigration along the U.S. southern border until after the election, because we're getting crucified in the press because of the number of people coming across. And what did AMLO say? Why, absolutely, President Biden, we would be very happy to do that for you on a few, but we do have a few conditions. Some of those conditions were something like 800,000 visas for Mexican citizens to be able to enter the United States. So, you know, yeah, we'll stop some of this illegal migration if you allow us to legally immigrate more people from Mexico into the United States. Why would he want that? Because of the remittances that will be sent back to Mexico by people working in the United States. That's a huge boon to the Mexican economy. Right now, something like 20% or more, actually, it's more like 25% of all of the working age people from Mexico who are working in the United States. And a large, I mean, billions of dollars a year of that money gets sent back to Mexico. That means it does not enter the economic system in the United States, and so it doesn't provide any economic benefit to the United States. It provides economic benefit to Mexico. That's one of the reasons why they've made the argument that we should be taxing those remittances. In some cases, like in the case of Guatemala and Honduras, those remittances make up to 40% of their entire GDP. 40%. Okay, so we're talking about millions, hundreds of millions of dollars every year to each of those countries. And so those countries have a vested interest in pushing as many of their people to the United States. Go work in the United States, take advantage of their education system. That's less of a strain on our education system. Take advantage of their healthcare system. That's less of a strain on our healthcare system. And, oh, by the way, we're going to send our criminals up there, and so we don't have to pay for them to eat in prisons in Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, places like that. We'll send all those prisoners up to the United States and let them be a problem to law enforcement there, and that's less of a cost on us in these other countries around the world. This is one of the ways that countries not only hold the United States hostage by the number of migrants that they allow through and extort money. So we want aid from the United States, and if the United States doesn't give it to us, well, fine, we'll just send millions of people up to your border, and that'll cost you far more. So there's a vested interest in the United States actually paying these ransoms, more or less, to countries across the globe. And we're talking about countries like Venezuela. One of the things that AMLO apparently demanded from the United States is that we lighten up the sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela. Okay, now, why do we have sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela? Oh, yeah, because they are communist dictatorships that persecute their people. And so that's not something we want in the Western Hemisphere, and so we have sanctions on those countries. Now AMLO is demanding that we lift the sanctions on those countries in exchange for him slowing down the migration coming into the United States. If you could somehow torture your brain to the point where you make the case that that's not bad for the United States and our national interests, I would have to take my hat off to you if you could actually come up with a reason why that's not bad for the U.S. The bottom line is, from an ethical and moral standpoint, the government of the United States should be closing the U.S. southern border for that reason alone, because they are being held hostage by countries that hate us. Countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, they are all holding the United States hostage with this case. And this is happening in Europe. Russia is actually flying people in from Iraq, from Indonesia, from the Near East, and is literally herding them up to the border with Finland and pushing them across the border into the EU, specifically to harm the EU, to cost the EU money. There are Russian travel agencies that are advertising in Iraq and places like that, come to Russia and we'll help you get into the EU where you can live and take advantage of the social welfare that they provide, free health care, free schooling, free everything. And Russia's doing it, Belarus is doing it. I've done a lot of reporting on this, and they're specifically doing it to harm the European Union. In the same way, countries are doing that specifically to harm the United States. And that's one reason why we need to do that. Now, from a lesser standpoint, we can talk about the public health concerns, because when you have unchecked migration and there are hundreds of thousands of people coming across the border that are not being checked, they can bring with them hoof and mouth disease. They can bring with them COVID. They can bring with them Ebola. We don't know. Tuberculosis. Some people have said that up to 20% of the people coming across the border have tuberculosis. I don't know if that's true or not. That hasn't been, I haven't verified that. But the bottom line is, it is certainly possible that they can bring diseases into the United States because they are coming across unchecked and unvetted, right? Lastly, the environmental impact. Anybody that's been down along the border has seen that there are absolute trash dumps on the U.S. side of the border. As these people come across the border, they dump all their clothes, they dump their backpacks, they dump all kinds of stuff, and they bathe in the stock tanks that are feeding our livestock that we end up eating. And in a lot of cases, those stock tanks become contaminated, and they have to kill those livestock, or they have to go get a different water source for those people. So we know that there are massive dangers when it comes to environmental impact and public health concerns as these people come across unchecked. Now, so sum it all up like this. Let's say that you move into a new community and there's a nice pond behind, right behind your apartment or your condo, where people can go and they can have picnics and they can go for a run around the lake out there. And so it's kind of a communal area back there. I used to live in a place like that when I lived in Germantown, Maryland, and it was very, very nice. And you go back there and you don't have a lot of friends yet because you just moved into town, and you see that there are some ducks that are floating around out there, and you go, oh man, you kind of make friends with some of those ducks. And my wife did that when we moved in. She even started naming some of the ducks because those were her first friends when we moved to Maryland. And, so you go back there and you feel sorry for these ducks. So you go back there, you take some bread and you start feeding the ducks. Well, then the week goes by and now all of a sudden there's more ducks. So you bring more food and you start feeding those ducks. And then the week goes by and there's even more ducks. Well, guess what? Now it's getting to the point where people can't go out there and have their picnics along the shores of the lake because there's too much duck poop everywhere. And when they pull out the food to have their picnic, the ducks attack them all and take all their food. So you thought you were being nice to the poor little ducks, but really what you were doing is you were making the place unlivable for your neighbors, the people who actually pay for that lake and for its upkeep. You were doing something you thought was humane and reasonable and nice, but in actuality, you were making the whole area worse for the people who actually pay for that area. And you didn't do it on purpose, you did it with the best of intentions, but that's exactly what happens. It's not the ducks' fault. You can't blame the ducks for coming to the source of food. The ducks want to eat, right? But you have to blame yourself for being compassionate to the ducks, because you really shouldn't. That's not the right time or place for you to be compassionate to the ducks. And if you keep feeding the ducks, you just get more ducks. The ducks end up taking over, and there you go. That's what you get. So that is what I have for today's live. Let's look and see if we've got any questions here. Boy, I see a lot of stuff flying by here. And Truth Defender says, damn ducks. First thing that needs to happen is all federal officers need to be removed from the border and move north of Texas state line. Or how about this, Sergeant E5? How about we let the Border Patrol actually patrol the border and do what they were intended to do in the first place, and that is to stop people from coming across the border, right? So rather than this misplaced compassion, rather than turning the Border Patrol into the welcome wagon, why don't we let them do their jobs? And that would be a whole lot better for America. So let's see. Question: is there a video circulating that only a portion of Eagle Pass is secured with some gates open, allowing unchecked entry? That is accurate, Amy. And I'm going to be going down there and I'll be showing it to you in the next couple of days. The reason I say that this is a security theater along the border is because this park in Eagle Pass is the focal point for the conflict between the federal government and the government of Texas. But Texas has yet to secure the entire border. And so there are still places where the migrants can just go and come right across, no problem. And I'll take you to those places and show them to you over the next couple of days. But yes, that is the case. And Obama phones and free internet, dumped a little boy, blah, blah, blah. Let's see if they're looking for questions here. There are something like 25 or 30 states that are now standing with Texas and even sending state troopers and stuff down to help Texas secure the border and stand up to the federal government. The federal government is not, as I said yesterday, they're not going to be going to, they're not going to be sending U.S. troops down to the border to fight the Texas National Guard. There was somebody on Twitter that was showing armored U.S. military armor that they said belonged to the Texas National Guard that was being moved toward the border, and they said they were shifting tanks and armored personnel carriers and stuff down to the border. That is actually Russian disinformation. Now, this is one other thing that we need to point out about this game of chicken, this theater that's going on along the border, is our adversaries are taking advantage of this to try to cause chaos and dissension among Americans on both sides of this issue. We have seen known propaganda outlets. These are internet sources that are known for disseminating propaganda from Russia, that are putting out these things like, oh, look, here's some military hardware that's going down toward the border. They're gearing up for a big fight down there. Russia would love nothing more than for there to be an actual armed confrontation along the border between Americans and have Americans killing each other. China would love nothing more than to see Americans shooting each other along the border. And that's why we have to be very careful about what we share on social media, because as it turns out, Ryan Macbeth, my friend who is an open source Intel guy, did a great video on this. I posted it here on YouTube, and I will post it over on my website at chuckholton.locals.com. This is really important to understand, that our adversaries are putting out false propaganda to try to cause there to be a violent incident along the U.S. southern border. They would love nothing more than that, because it would whip up Americans against Americans, and that does their job for them. If we defeat ourselves, then the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians don't have to try to defeat us. They just have to try to spread this false propaganda and persuade Americans to do something rash. So be very careful about what you're showing on social media along the border. So folks, if you want to be better prepared for whatever might come, because eventually this is going to come to the point where America starts to balkanize and starts to separate into separate republics even at some point along the border. And that will not be the time for you to start getting prepared for this, to protect your family and to be ready for whatever comes. Whether it's a localized or a generalized disturbance in America, you need to be prepared. And so we are holding a training at Maple Fork Lodge in Beckley, West Virginia, coming up in May, the second week of May. It's a very high quality training, and this is not for people that have never picked up a gun before. We're bringing in Tim Miller, very high quality, one of the best trainers on planet Earth. I am unbelievably 100% sure of that. Just look at his resume and it'll tell you how good a trainer he is. Former Secret Service agent, former cop, former Marine, and a federal agent. We are also bringing in former Delta Force warriors, guys, some of the most elite special forces on the planet. These are people who fire millions of rounds a year, and we're going to be bringing them in to train you on how to be a survivor, not just a range shooter, but a survivor if you have to concealed carry to protect your family. Not only that, we're going to be talking about how to harden your home to make it a fortress, to keep you and your family safe, how to, doing stop the bleed training, we're going to do some basic medical stuff, and we're going to do a lot of scenario-based training that everything from church shootings to school shootings to robberies at gas stations and how you should respond in each of those cases. And we're going to be talking about the legal ramifications of those things to you if you have to get involved. And so I highly recommend it. If you're interested in that training, send me an email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and I will send you a link to that. My wife may be able to actually send the link on the chat right now, but if you're watching this after we're not live anymore, just send me an email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and we will send you the link for how to sign up for that. It's a very that we don't have. We're not going to have like 50 people at this thing. Probably 20 at the most, and we've already got probably half of that already signed up. So if you are interested in going to this tactical self-preparation training, get your deposit in immediately. Get it in very soon, or you're going to miss out. Here, I will post the link to it right here in the chat right now. So if you're online and you want to do this, will there be additional training sessions besides the one in May? Amy says, yes, they do several training sessions a year around the country. This one in particular will be at our place in West Virginia. Where can I find proof that folks, their medical cost comes from the VA system funds that trying to survive on VA pension? The bottom line is that the federal government ends up paying for a large portion of the medical care that is given to these migrants, and that reduces the amount of money available to the VA. It may not be coming directly from the VA, but it is taking away from budgetary things that would allow for the VA to better serve veterans like me. Will I be at the training? Probably not, because I'm probably going to be in Armenia on our tour that we have going over there. Yeah, no, for sure I will not be at the training because I'll be in Armenia looking at the dates. Resistor says, send Kamala and Joe to the border for a swim. Yeah, good luck with that. There's no way they're going to go down there. So, question. Let's see. Any other questions real quick? I'm watching the time. I'm going to have to get going here pretty quick. What other ways can we prepare for what's going to happen in this country? Well, be prepared to be able to defend your house, to make your home a hardened, secure place, or look for an alternate location for you to go to if things really fall apart. And I highly recommend a book called Survival Theory 2. Not Survival Theory 1, but Survival Theory 2. I highly recommend that book if you want to know more about how to make yourself safe in any eventuality, especially in the case of a generalized or localized, disaster, hardship, whatever. Any news on the hit on Jordan that killed some U.S. soldiers? I heard that it happened, but I have not looked into the details of that because it just took place. Thank you, Heather Margaret, for asking that question. I will likely do more reporting about that on my next live for CBN, which is probably coming up tomorrow. Who are these migrants? Should they work and pay taxes? They do work and pay taxes in many cases. These migrants, many of them are being pre-cleared to work inside the United States. And that means they can get a Social Security number. That means they can get welfare. They can get SNAP benefits. They can get unemployment, whatever. But they also pay taxes when they go to work. And so that is definitely possible. Question, how do such very poor people get $9,000 to pay cartels to get here? That's a very good question. A lot of times they gather up money from their family members, they sell their home or whatever, and they gather up money, and their family members give them money because the agreement they have is, you come to the United States, you get a job, and then you send money back to Cuba to pay for the next group of people. A lot of them are coming to the United States with money that they're receiving from people who have already gotten to the United States and are sending money back home in remittances, okay? How do you know about the app what do you know about the app that people have downloaded to get them here with instructions and forms? Yes, it's called the CBP1 app, and I'm going to be doing a lot of reporting on that. I have done a lot of reporting on that. There's a lot of corruption. Suzanne Rambo, thank you for the $3. I appreciate that. I really appreciate the donations here. Small or big, we appreciate all of them. The CBP1 app is an app put out by the Department of State that allows migrants to make an asylum claim without coming to the U.S. southern border. And so then they can get their appointment done online, and then they can get on an airplane and fly directly into the heartland of America and skip the border altogether. That doesn't make them legal migrants necessarily. It just gives them a chance to make their initial asylum claim outside the U.S., which has never been available before. But there's a lot of corruption that takes place around that, where people are making fake appointments and then selling them to people. There are lawyers on the southern part of the border who are selling appointments that don't actually exist, et cetera, et cetera. Wow. Sarah Lynn Johnson, thank you very much, $49.99. That's very great. I really appreciate that. And we will make the best use of it we can. Okay, so let's see, it's 3:36. I'm going to have to get going, folks, and go to my gate for my flight. I get in late tonight to Austin, and then I'll be meeting with Todd Bensman in the morning, and we'll be doing a live with him in the morning, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. Where will you vote in 2024? And could this election be fair? I will have to vote absentee, as I usually do, because I live outside the United States. And so my votes don't even get counted unless it comes down to a tie. They don't even bother with the absentee votes. So it's like, what's the point of even bothering? Because it's very unlikely that it will come down to a tie. The point is, they should not get paid at all because they should not be here. Yes, absolutely. What was the survival book you mentioned? It's called Survival Theory 2, number 2. Survival Theory 2, and highly recommend it. Go get that book on Amazon. It has some very good points in there about if you think you're going to, put 6 months of food away in your house and then you're good, you got another thing coming, folks, because it is going to take a lot more than that to survive if the whole world falls apart, especially if we have an EMP attack, which it's really a matter of when, not if. That we have either a localized or generalized EMP attack across the United States. And if that happens, the difficulties that Americans will go to would basically put us back to the 1800s. And I did a whole video about that. It's right here on my YouTube channel. You can go look it up about what to do in case of an EMP attack. And so highly recommend. It's one of my most popular videos. You go look that up. Sergeant E5, thank you very much for that $100. Remember the Alamo? Well, we may have another Alamo coming in Eagle Pass, Texas, and so we may be saying remember Eagle Pass before too long. I will be in Eagle Pass tomorrow night, most likely, and so I will be reporting from there for the next week or so. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And folks, if you haven't hit the like button, that doesn't cost a thing, and it does help us quite a bit. Thank you very much for everybody who will go and hit that like button. We got 2,400 people online and only 1,099 likes, according to my software here. So take a second and just go down there and hit that like button. It really does help. It makes YouTube's algorithm show these videos to a lot more people because we're getting a lot of engagement. So all the things that you're putting in the comments help, and the likes and the subscription. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that, and then you can get notified by hitting the notification bell before we go live, and you can actually catch us live, while we're doing this and get your questions answered. So thank you very much. All right, I'm going to have to go. Let me pray before we go. This is a big deal for America and for the world, and it's a complex and thorny issue, so I think we should pray about that. Lord, I just come to you right now and I ask you for wisdom for our leaders, for the Border Patrol, for the National Guard, for the government of Texas, and for the everyday people who live along the border and having to deal with this very complex, difficult problem. Lord, I pray for the migrants who are coming up. I ask, Lord, that you would give them clarity and wisdom and help them to understand that just making more money isn't necessarily going to fix all their problems. They may be importing their problems with them as they come in. And so, Lord, I pray that they would, the people who are considering joining that flow of 650,000 people coming north to the United States would think again and would think about maybe just trying to better their lives where they are, where they speak the language, they know the culture, they have a society around them that can help them, and that they would think more about working together with their neighbors to improve their quality of life where they are, rather than swallowing the lie that they need to come to Eastern or to Western Europe or Australia or the United States in order to have a better life, because that we know is not true, Father. We pray for all of us that we would become less wedded to the idea that more money equals a better life, and that we would learn to just rely on you and to rely on our neighbors and to rely even on ourselves, to work hard and to be diligent in our labor and to love the people around us, to be generous to those we meet. And if more of us did that, Father, we wouldn't have to have people moving all over the planet looking for more money. So I pray, Lord, that people would have that kind of wisdom, that they would wake up to the reality of what they're being sold by the media. And Lord, I pray for safety along the border. I pray that our soldiers, the National Guard, the Border Patrol, that there would not be any kind of violent outbreak along the border with Texas, and that that border would be closed and people would not be encouraged to break the law and become criminals by entering countries illegally. Lord, I just pray that they'd be able to do things the legal way and improve their lives that way. So we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate all of you. I'm going to get on an airplane, and I will be back with you tomorrow, so stay tuned. We'll see you later. Maybe we'll see you later.